my name is Carmelinda, aka Crafty Carms, and welcome to my stroller bag tutorial. I've had so many people waiting for this video for so long, and I'm so excited to finally be doing it right. I really wanted to make this as beginner friendly and as clear as possible, so I really wanted to do it right. So thank you for all your patience in waiting for me to finish this. So let's get into it. Like I said, I really wanted to make this as beginner friendly as possible, and I do think that beginners can make this, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend this as like your very first sewing project, maybe like your third or fourth sewing project, and I think you can do great. There isn't necessarily anything super fancy about this tutorial, but you will need to know how to do a gather, how to quilt, and how to do a buttonhole. And I will try and go over those as best as I can, but I will also put what you can look up if you need more information that's more clear. So to start off, we're going to talk about the supplies that you need. Besides the obvious supplies like scissors or a cutter, sewing machine, and a ruler, you're also going to need about a yard of fabric for the main piece. This is what the outside is going to look like. And then you're going to need 3/4 of a yard for the lining fabric. So that's what goes on the inside. Along with that, you're going to need about a 1/2 yard of interfacing. That is what gets sandwiched in between the outside and the lining. For interfacing, you can use anything that is sturdy. I highly recommend using Pellon Flex Foam. I will have all of the supplies that I use in the description. I think that this is a great interfacing for this specific project because it keeps it nice and sturdy, and it is beginner friendly to use in my opinion. You will also need 2 buttons. I would recommend slightly larger buttons, that way they are nice and sturdy and don't slip. And you will also need 35 inches of rope. So let's cut our fabric. So first you're going to cut your big outside piece. So this is your main fabric and your interfacing, and this is going to be 32 by 12 inches. Then we are also going to cut a piece of the main, the interfacing, and the lining that is 7 by 12 inches. This is first a rectangle, and then we are going to cut it into a circle for the bottom. Then we are going to cut 2 pieces of our main fabric that are 3 inches by 23 inches. Along with that, for our straps, which is our main lining as well, we are going to cut 2 pieces that are 20 by 4 inches. Then the last piece of the main fabric that you're going to cut is the bias tape, and that is going to be 32 by 2.5 inches. Then for the lining, we're going to cut 1 piece that is 32 by 10 inches, and then we're going to cut another piece that is 32 by 3 inches, as well as a piece that is 7 inches by 32 inches. And once you've cut out all of your fabric, which honestly takes way longer than it should, you are ready to sew. So let's do that. Before we start sewing, let's round out the edges of that bottom piece. I personally just took something that was circular around my house, which happened to be a dish, and I just laid it on top and kind of traced it and just made the edge circle. It does not need to be perfect by any means. As long as there is a slight curve there, you're golden. Alright, so the first step we're going to do is attach the interfacing to the main fabric. I personally really like the quilted look for the stroller bag, so I would recommend quilting it, but it is completely up to you. You do not have to. If this is your first time quilting, I would highly recommend using something that has some sort of lines or pattern on it that you can kind of go by. I personally went by a pattern that is on my stroller bag, as you can see, and it was just very easy to sew in between those flower patterns. You can use maybe a striped fabric or a gingham, and then you can just quilt, and it's easier. For quilting, I personally like to keep my stitch length as long as I can. That way it doesn't take as long, so I keep my stitch length at 4. So you're going to start by quilting your large main piece. And then once you're done with that, you can quilt the bottom. If you need more information on how to quilt a big piece, you can always look up videos on YouTube. But don't overthink it. All that matters is that it looks cute in the end, so who cares? So once your main piece is quilted and your bottom piece is quilted, now we can sew them together. And when you sew this together, I shorten my stitch length a little bit. That way it's a little bit more tight to about 3. So you're going to take your main piece and connect it right sides together, and you're going to sew right along there, and it's going to be a big circle. So now we're going to attach the bottom. I personally like that the seam be on the back, so I like to attach that seam that we just made to the middle of the back of the bottom. Hopefully that makes sense. And then we can pin it together and then sew it all around. Make sure you really take your time with this. It is a little bit of bulk, and make sure that you are sewing both sides together. This part is really important. It's better to have a larger seam allowance than less, so make sure you're taking your time, really like making sure you're sewing through all the layers. And then once that's done, look, you're like almost there. Actually, not really, but you can see it coming along. So now you're done with your main part. Now we're gonna put that aside and we're gonna work on the lining. So first you're gonna take that piece that is 32 inches by 7 inches. This is gonna be the channel which the drawstring is gonna go through. So we're gonna make that channel. So first we're gonna fold down about 1/4 of an inch. And then you're gonna take the measurement of your rope and kind of measure, make sure that your rope is gonna fit through there. I was using a 2mm rope, so it was fairly thin. So I just created a smaller channel by folding it down, iron it in place. We're gonna do a lot of ironing. If you are a beginner sewist, you're gonna get really familiar with your iron. Mine is always set up now and ready to go because you just use it all the time when you're sewing. Once you folded it down and created that channel, we're gonna sew along the bottom and put that in place. Alright, so once you're done with the elastic channel, we're going to do what you call a French seam. If you've never done a French seam before, you can look it up and find a more in-depth tutorial, but it is fairly simple. You're going to sew them wrong sides together, so it's going to look wrong at first. And you're going to sew that, do a really thin seam allowance, and then you're going to flip it, and then it looks right, and then you're going to iron that and then sew it. So pretty much the seam is hidden at the end of the day. You're not finishing it with anything, you're just hiding it. Alright, so now we're going to put together the lining. So you can take that piece that is 32 inches by 10 inches and the piece that is 32 inches by 3 inches, and you can sew along the edge right sides together. Also, all of this will be sewn together with about a 3/8 seam allowance, but that does not need to be super precise since we aren't making clothing or anything, as long as it is consistent. As long as your seam allowance is consistent, we are good. Alright, so now you see you have the edges. Now we're going to attach the bottom. So go ahead and attach the bottom just like you did the outside. Make sure it's right sides together. So now we have a whole bunch of circles in case you can't tell. Now we're gonna put it all together and here's where the magic happens. Alright, so we're gonna make a little sandwich. So you can take that piece that is 32 inches by 10 inches and you can hold it with the seam facing out. And then you can take the drawstring channel that we made, you can sandwich it with the French seam facing down. And then you're going to take the piece that is 3 inches by 32 inches and you're going to sandwich that on top. Now the seams for these are both going to be facing out, but the French seam in the middle is going to be facing in. And then you're going to sew all along the top, making sure all 3 of those layers are sewn together well. Alright, so now we are all done with our lining and with our main piece. So now we are going to do a basting stitch. A basting stitch is a stitch that is it's kind of like a temporary stitch. It's going to be just to hold things together. You're not going to be able to see it, so it's okay if it's a little bit wonky, but I would say make sure that it's a little bit closer to the edge, that way it gets hidden when you sew the real stitch. So go ahead and base stitch the lining and the main piece together. Alright, once that is sewn together, we are going to make the ruffle. If you have never made a ruffle before and you really want an in-depth tutorial, you can look up how to do a gather stitch. I will have videos that explain this fairly well in the caption, so you can go check those out. But first off, you're going to take the pieces that are 23 by 4 inches and you're going to sew them together, and we are also going to do another French seam. So you can sew them together, wrong sides together, and then flip that, give it a good press, and then sew along right sides together, and then we have a big circle. Once you have your big circle, we're going to do a seam at the bottom, so you can fold that up 1/4 of an inch, and then you can fold it up again 1/4 of an inch, Give that a good press and sew that in place. Alright, so we have a big circle in case you can't tell, and now we're going to make little notches, that way we can line that up with the basket. So in order to line up the ruffle with the bag, we need 4 markings. So 2 markings are already the seams that we have, and then we want to make another marking halfway between those seams. So you can take the seams, kind of match them up, and then find where the middle of that is and make a little slight notch, or you can mark it with a pencil, whatever you feel more comfortable with, and do the same on the other side. And then you should have 4 notches that are equally around the circle. You can also take your stroller bag and do the same thing. Find the halfway point of the stroller bag and then find the 4th way point of the stroller bag, and then you have 4 notches that are also equally distant apart. Now we're going to take our ruffle and we're going to do the gather. So you're going to lengthen your stitch as long as you can. Mine only lengthens to 4. So we're going to do a 4 length stitch, and you're going to stitch from one of the French seams to the other. Make sure you keep your tails really long because we're going to pull those tails, and if they slip under, then they're a little bit harder to pull. So do 1 stitch from one French seam to the other, make the tails really long, cut those, make the tails long again, and then do another stitch from the French seam to the other French seam. So we should have a big circle, have 1 stitch halfway, and then have another stitch to the other halfway. Alright, now we're going to take those 4 notches that we've made and we're going to line them all up. I would recommend keeping the French seams on the sides, that way it just looks a little bit more symmetrical. Once those are pinned in place, we are going to take one of our tails and we're going to pull it taut, and you're going to pull it, and you will see the ruffle slowly gather. I would recommend pulling one side until it's gathered and then pulling the other side until it is fully gathered. And then you are going to do that on the other side as well, and you will see that the ruffle is gathered all the way around. If this is your first time doing a ruffle, congratulations! You did it! I'm proud of you! It wasn't so hard, and this is also something that is very important for sewing. I use gathers all the time for skirts, for shirts, for ruffles, for anything that you want to do, so it is very important. So now we are going to do another basting stitch, and we're going to baste that in place, that way it stays in place. Remember, basting stitches are temporary, so if you stitch on top of that basting stitch that you already have that you made for the lining, that is great. Alright, you see your stroller bag starting to come together. Yay! So now we're going to make the straps. I personally really like a well-cushioned strap, so even though I did not add it to the list of supplies that you need, you can add interfacing to the strap. I will show you how I am doing mine, but this is optional, just so you know. Alright, so you're going to take your pieces that are 20 by 4 inches, and you're going to fold them in half, right sides together, and we're going to sew those with a 3/8 seam allowance. Once those are sewn, we are going to flip them inside out. Here's the part where I'm going to add the interfacing. You can simply take a safety pin or a loop turner and pull the interfacing through the strap all the way till almost the top. Leave about 1/2 inch for the top. Once the interfacing is pulled through, I personally like to do a stitch all the way through the interfacing and the strap. That way it looks a little bit more quilted, a little bit more padded. I like to do one all the way up the side and one all the way up the other. That way it's just cute. It's just for aesthetic. There's really no purpose in it. Once you are done with this, we're going to take the top that we left, that is about 1/2 inch, and you're going to fold it down about 1/4 inch and then fold it down another 1/4 inch. Give that a good press, and then we are going to sew that in place. Repeat this with both straps, and we are also going to add our buttonholes. I'm not gonna lie, I am not the best at doing buttonholes, even though I have done them a couple times. And every machine has a different way of doing buttonholes, so I would really recommend searching your machine model buttonhole tutorial That's what I did when I first started, and now I figured it out. So you are going to add a buttonhole kind of where it feels right. There's no right or wrong for this. Don't do it super close to the edge, but don't do it super far. I kind of just do it like right above that seam that I just made. Don't be too hard on yourself. Don't get too lost in technique. Do what feels right. Make sure you just get comfortable with your craft and have fun with it. That's all that matters. All right, so our straps are ready. Now we're gonna get the bias tape ready. Bias tape is a way to hide seams. So we're gonna hide that big seam and exposed ends that we're gonna have at the top of our stroller basket. All right, so you're gonna take that piece that is 32 inches by 2.5 inches and fold it in half, wrong sides together. I know it looks wrong, but just trust me. All right, so once that is well pressed, you're gonna take the edge of it and you're gonna fold it in about 1/2 inch and give that a good press as well. You're gonna see why. Now we are going to use a whole bunch of clips and we are going to clip everything together. So first off, we're gonna clip the straps in place. This is completely up to you as to where you want your straps. Some people have a wider stroller, some people have a smaller stroller. My straps are about 8 inches apart, and so I think it's 8 inches, and then I think the side is about like 7 inches. I don't remember, but they are 8 inches apart. So as long as your straps are even, it's okay. So once you're happy with your strap placement, you're going to pin them facing down. Now you're going to take your bias tape and you're going to take the side that is not folded in, and you're going to start that at the back where your first stitch was, where your seam is on the back of your stroller basket. So you're going to take that and we're going to pin it all around the stroller basket. Once that is pinned all around, you're going to take the side that is folded in and you're going to tuck that end that is not folded in into the side that is folded in, and you will see that then it is hidden and it is nice and folded over and you don't have any exposed seams. So now we're going to sew all along the top, all the layers all together. Make sure you take your time with it and that every single layer, the lining, the main part, the ruffle, and the straps are all sewn together nicely. Take your time with it. This part is very important. Alright, so once that is sewn in place, this is also a little bit tricky, but make sure you take your time with it because we are almost done. You are going to take your iron and we're going to fold over that bias tape onto the inside and iron it in place. Give that a really good press all around. Make sure that no edges are visible. Sometimes it takes a little bit of finagling because it's so many layers, but make sure you take your time with it. Give it a good press, clip it in place. And once you're happy with your results, you're going to sew that in place. Once again, make sure you take your time with it. Make sure all the layers are folded in and that nothing is exposed. And once that is sewn in place, we are almost done. Our final step is attaching the button. So the button is fairly easy. I attach it by hand. You can always look up how to attach a button and you can follow that. It's kind of nice because the back of the button is hidden by the ruffle that is hanging down, so it doesn't need to be perfect by any means. And once the button is attached, we are almost done. And last but not least, we need to add the drawstring. So you're going to take that channel and you're going to make a little slit with either a seam ripper or a little piece of scissors. And you are going to feed the rope all the way through the channel and take it out the other side. You can finish these with a buttonhole. I find that it is kind of tricky, and since it's something that's not going to be washed and going through too much wear, I think it's okay if it just frays itself. And you can pull that drawstring, make sure it works, make sure your rope is long enough, make sure everything works together and looks great. And guess what? You are done. Yay! I think this is such a fun and practical project. It is a great gift. I am actually going to be gifting one to a friend soon. It is a great gift, and so I hope you enjoyed this. I hope I explained it well. I'm sorry if I didn't. I hope yours turned out well. If you do make one, make sure you tag me on TikTok or on Instagram at Crafty Carms. And I hope this is the beginning of many YouTube videos. They do take time, and right now I am in a busy season of my life, but I'm hoping in the winter time when things calm down that I have more time to be able to share through this platform. So thank you for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I will see you later. Bye!